So we can just hit request, it'll be approved, hit that request, and then boom, that's all that has to do. Okay, so you can see that that went through from Jellyseer, that request, and it's already done. It's downloading now, and then it's already added to my recently added movies in Jellyfin. So it's absolutely beautiful. Okay, I went ahead and just threw in another album that I do own. Again, love Ben Queller, awesome dude. Now the Gluetun network is just responsible for funneling all network traffic through a VPN. So in this tutorial, we'll use Proton VPN. So the cool thing about that is that it basically acts like a native app. You come right in here and it looks perfect. It looks beautiful. In this video, I'm going to give you a comprehensive tutorial on how to set up Jellyfin with the full R stack to have fully automated request to download, to torrent, to archiving into our Jellyfin media directory. All of that traffic being routed into a container called Gluetun, which funnels it all through our Proton VPN account, so that even though everything that we're doing in this tutorial is using public domain media, we still really value our privacy, and we want to ensure that we're only interacting with the Proton VPN IP address and not leaking our own IP address. So I do want to just emphasize that the purpose of this tutorial is to demonstrate and educate how to set up these self-hosted containers, how to maintain our privacy, which we obviously deserve, and just better understand self-hosting in general. So I know that there are a lot of Jellyfin tutorials out there, so I appreciate you being with me today. I'm going to try to be as descriptive and yet succinct as possible to get you as much information as I can as quickly as possible. So let's go ahead and talk about our network stack real quick before we even start opening up a Docker Compose file. So how many containers are we going to be running in this tutorial? We've got 6 plus 2, 8 total containers. I'm just going to do it all in one Docker Compose file, keep it as simple as possible. Let's quickly talk about what's going on here. So these containers ending with R are known as the R containers or the R stack. They're responsible for finding media through indexers and sending jobs to a downloader. In this case, qBittorrent is what we're going to use. You can set this up in a variety of ways. I generally just like to have all 5 of these containers in my Gluetun network. Now the Gluetun network is just responsible for funneling all network traffic through a VPN. So in this tutorial, we'll use Proton VPN. I do have an affiliate link in the description, so make sure to use that if you're setting Proton up for the first time. You do need to have a paid account to do this. Cannot do this with just the free tier on Proton. Proton does support port forwarding, and they have no log policy, so that has been verified and audited, so they are not logging anything coming from your IP. So that's what we want with the VPN, is full privacy. So let's quickly talk about each of these. Radarr is responsible for looking up movie content. What we will do is link all 3 of these to Prowlarr. Prowlarr is responsible for looking up public and private indexes or trackers and communicate that tracker information back to our Radarr, Sonarr, or Lidarr. And then Radarr, Sonarr, or Lidarr is then going to send that job to qBittorrent to download from those trackers. And then once that is done, Radarr, Sonarr, and Lidarr are going to reorganize that download based on our renaming strategy for Jellyfin to then index, and it is available in our Jellyfin media player. Radarr is for movies, Sonarr is for TV shows, Lidarr is for music. Again, we are using public domain media in this demonstration. Next thing I want to quickly talk about, I'm going to pull up this website from the Trash Guides. This is a great resource for information, but I just want to talk about the media organization or the file structure. So there are two main places for media. You have your downloads, your torrent, and you have the restructured media location. And you can either have hard links between the two so that you have a file in two different locations, but you're only actually taking up the file space of one file, or you can not have hard links, in which case you will have a duplicate of the file. Now, in any case, you can always delete that downloaded file and your other file is still going to work. Where this becomes relevant is if you are going to seed that file and you don't want to have duplicate files for the entire time of seeding. So if you want to continue to be able to seed and not take up twice the amount of space, using hard links is advised. But you should note that you need to have only one file system to be able to have the hard links. And by that I mean one Docker volume. And so that's when you should just have like a parent data folder as opposed to a separate Docker volume for media and downloads. So we'll go ahead and follow that structure, see if our hard links are working. I just want to talk about that real quick. So before we get the whole R stack going, let's go ahead and just set up Jellyfin by itself. Maybe you already have media that you've burned from your DVDs or music or TV shows that you've purchased. You can add these straight into our media folder for Jellyfin to pick up. So let's go ahead and try doing that. So for this tutorial, I am using a Linux server. This is really just kind of the best path for self-hosting in general. And I'm going to be using Docker to containerize our applications within Linux. So I just want to keep a heads up on that. If you're using like a Mac Mini or something like that, you can just install Jellyfin server on there. We're going to be using Docker and Docker Compose. In general, you'll probably create a Docker folder where you're creating folders for each application to house a Docker Compose file. I like to just put that into my home Thomas Docker folder. That's where I am right now. I'm using Visual Studio Code so that I can easily have a terminal that I can SSH. I can see the file structure right here of that Docker folder, and I can see an active window. I have a video on getting VS Code set up to do this if you want to use VS Code. It's a great way to do it. It's basically like SSH and SFTP and an editor all in one window. So great for demonstrations. As you can see, I've already done a whole number of tutorials. If you want to see videos on each of these, this video obviously is going to be dedicated to Jellyfin. That's where I'm going to put this whole stack. You can call this folder whatever you want. You can call it R, Media, Flicks, something to that extent. But we are just going to create a Jellyfin folder for all of this stuff. And let's go ahead and get started with a docker-compose.yml file. So I'm on the Jellyfin documentation right here. It is a very straightforward, simple compose file. We don't need everything in here. So we're just going to start with this, give you like an official starting place. Okay, so for the first thing that we'll do is actually put in a user ID and group ID who will be running the container. So I will set this to 1000 and 1000, which matches my own user ID. If you remove this, then I believe you will just be running the container as root. So just keep the user in mind if you do run into some kind of permission issue where Jellyfin isn't able to index. If that's the case, check your logs to see if there is a permission issue. Next thing I'll do is I'll just go ahead and comment out the UDP port. This will be for auto discovery, I believe, and the TCP port is for our actual Jellyfin web application. So I'm not going to be doing auto discovery right now, but just keep that in mind. The config for Jellyfin, so we want everything to persist, and I'm just going to put it inside of the Jellyfin Docker app folder that I created. And so that we don't get confused with having two Jellyfin folders, I'll call this Jellyfin config. And then I'll also just call this one Jellyfin cache. And then it's just pretty clear what we're doing here. Okay, and then they listed out another way to do these bind mappings. I don't particularly care too much about that, so we can kind of do this in one line here. And I'm going to use an environmental variable here so that I can easily set this for all of the containers and have it defined in one place. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's create a .env and let's set our media location. And I'm going to put this in data media. So again, we're going to have that data top level folder and then followed by media. Within media, we'll have TV, music, movies, and then also within data, we'll have a downloads folder. Now, typically this is going to be on a mounted hard drive. So you're going to want, a larger hard drive. So, you're going to want it to mount your hard drive first and then put this on a certain location like this. And then maybe you'll have like a apps, Jellyfin, and then data. That's probably what you're actually going to be using. So for the purpose of the tutorial, we're just going to have a data folder right here in our Docker folder. Okay, and then I'm not going to use the publish server URL for this. So I'm going to get rid of this. I will go ahead and add the environment for time zone. So again, I'm going to use a variable so that I don't have to specify the time zone in every single place. Let's create a variable for time zone, and I will put America Denver in there. So I'm going to get rid of the publish server URL. We're just going to serve this over HTTP with no URL for this example. So I'm not going to talk about reverse proxies at all in this tutorial. We'll do that in a later tutorial. Next thing I do want to do is just go ahead and make this mapping for supporting hardware acceleration. Even if you don't have a dedicated GPU, you might have a CPU with an integrated GPU. So I would just go ahead and do this mapping just in case. It's not going to mess anything up, but it will help you support hardware acceleration. Okay, delete these comments. And that is everything we need to do. Make sure port 8096 is available. If it's not, then just use a different port. You can use whatever port here you want to map. So we'll just stick with the default 8096 and see if we can get this up and running. Oh, I do want to just go ahead and create our folder structure here before we actually get this going. So let's go ahead and create the folder structure. I'm going to create a data folder, and then within data, we're going to create a folder for media. And then also in data, we're creating a downloads folder. And then in media, let's create a folder for movies, TV, and music. Downloads, I'll just put everything in downloads. I think that'll be fine. So let's go ahead and get this up and running. Let's cd into Jellyfin, and then let's do a docker compose up D. And then because I haven't pulled these images before, it's going to pull them for the very first time and then take up our Jellyfin container. So subsequent times when I take it back down and take it back up, it'll be very quick. Doesn't need to download the container at all. Let's clear this. Let's take a quick look at logs. So let's do a sudo docker logs. And you can see that right off the bat, it's having a permission issue accessing that config. So let's go ahead and take this back down, and I'll tell you why. And let's try creating these folders ourselves. So let's delete this, create a folder for Jellyfin config, create a folder for Jellyfin cache, and let's take it back up. Okay, let's make sure I'm spelling everything correctly. Okay, folders created, spelling correct. Let's take it up. Quick look at the logs, and I'm not seeing those errors this time. So, okay, let's open up a browser and go to port 8096 on the IP address of our server. Mine is 192.168.4.248, and then go to 8096. So we've got our Jellyfin app up and running. Let's call the server name WildTech Media. Go ahead and get this set up. username, do Thomas, go to next, and then let's go ahead and set up our media. So let's do music, or sorry, let's do movies, and all of this is fine. Okay, and then we need to add the folder. Oh, I forgot it right here. So folder, and this is going to be, so remember what our bind mount was. So inside of the container, we have just our /media. That's all Jellyfin knows about. So /media and then movies. Okay, now we can click OK. Okay, we have movies. Let's do the same thing for TV or shows. And we can call it shows or TV. I guess shows actually makes more sense, but I'm going to stick with TV for my bind mount. Go with media, TV. Okay. Everything else in here should be good. Hit OK. And then let's go ahead and add our music. Add a folder for that. Media, music. Okay. Let's click next. English, allow remote users. Yes. And then we're done. So let's go ahead and sign in. Okay. And we're in our Jellyfin. We don't have anything, no media. So let's go ahead and add some music. I have plenty of music that I've purchased. I'm just going to make this available to myself. So the way the file structure would be inside of your Jellyfin media in our music is that we would have subfolders for each artist and then subfolders for each album within that. So I'm going to go ahead and create a folder for Ben Queller, dude that I've followed for a very, very long time. And then let's see if I can just drag his first album in here. So album name, his first album is self-titled, so just Ben Queller. And then typically you might have the year of the album that was released as well. So this whole naming structure can be done in Lidarr, and Lidarr can actually rename all of your music with whatever structure you want. So it's really awesome in that sense. So we've added that music. Okay, I went ahead and just threw in another album that I do own. Again, love Ben Queller, awesome dude. And just to get it to, I don't know how long it typically takes to index, but I did just go into my dashboard, libraries, and then I went to music, and then I hit the refresh scan library. So if something doesn't immediately show, go ahead and try just going to the scan all libraries. And then you can see that I now have some music on Jellyfin. So if for movies, you would just put the movie, you'd create a folder for the movie title and the year, kind of like how I have the albums. And then the media file should be movie title, year 2. You can use Radarr again to rename all the movies. TV shows are typically going to be the TV show name, and then a subfolder for the season, and then subfolder for the files. Okay, so we have this portion complete with Jellyfin. Now I'm looking at the trash guides again because they just have an example of setting up Radarr and Sonarr. I haven't even really felt that I needed Bazaar yet because I'm getting subtitles just from Jellyfin, but Bazaar is for subtitles, so you can get that configured as well. I suppose we might as well put that in there. So let's grab all of this. The only change I'm going to make is that I'm going to use the Linux IO containers or images. So I'll show you how to switch that. Now also, we are going to set up our Gluetun and our VPN throughout this. So actually, before we set up the R stack, let's just do Gluetun and qBittorrent. So I'll head over to Glutun's GitHub page here. They have an example docker-compose file. This is what we'll start with. And then let's go ahead and grab this, put that into our docker-compose file. I don't even really know why they commented out the container name. It's always good to have container names. Okay, and then we can put our persisted Gluetun data just in a Gluetun folder right here. Let's go ahead and create that. So do Gluetun, and then that's what it's going to bind to. For time zone, let's go ahead and put in our time zone variable. We don't really need the server list updater, so I'm going to omit it for now. Okay, so here's where our Proton VPN comes in handy. we're just going to set the VPN provider to Proton VPN, and we do need to use the OpenVPN type. It is the only type that supports port forwarding on Proton VPN. And then we're going to go get our username and password for OpenVPN on our Proton console. Now, I do want to add a variable for port forwarding. We need this for qBittorrent to work. And then I'll also just put in VPN server preferences, and we'll just say that we want to only use servers in the United States. So let's create environmental variables for OpenVPN user and OpenVPN password. Go ahead and put those into our .env. And then the last thing that we're going to do is map the ports that we're going to actually use. So I already know the ports that all my R stack is going to use. I'm just going to go ahead and throw them in here for now because they need to be mapped on the Gluetun container, because the way that we're doing the networking, only Gluetun is going to be able to map and expose the ports. So I'm going to go ahead and just set that up. That way our Gluetun is already set up. I'll go back and refer to each of these ports. Okay, so we're going to go into the Proton VPN console. And if you don't already have Proton VPN, check out the link in the description. It's my affiliate link. It'll give me some credit for sending you here. You do get a free, well, you get a 30-day money back guarantee. So you can test this out. If you decide that you're not going to be using it, then you can get your money back. They are already doing a Black Friday deal for like $2.99 a month, I believe it is. So that is a great deal to just ensure that you have privacy, especially when you're doing torrents like this. Even though we're doing public domain content, just good to be private. Okay, I'm signed into Proton. You can see I've got my subscription here. Got a great deal. That was $3 a month, I think, for 24 months. Okay, I'm just gonna go directly to the link here. So account.proton.me, u0vpn, OpenVPN, IKE v2. And that's gonna take me right to my OpenVPN username and password. So I'm going to copy that and put that right there, my user, and copy this. I'll put this link to, you should be able to get here by searching. And I'm gonna paste that password in there. Now I might just go ahead and do this off screen, but now we have that set up. Okay, so before getting Gluetun started, let's go ahead and add our qBittorrent. We'll make sure our VPN is working as expected before we start adding any downloads or anything like that. Okay, qBittorrent is offered by the Linux server IO. Let's go ahead and check that out. And I'll go ahead and just use this docker-compose file. The one thing that we're going to change is that we're not going to be mapping the ports here. We're moving that, of course, to our Gluton. Okay, delete the services. So important to note that we can control what port we're running this on within the container. And then that's going to control what port is going to be on the mapping side. So you can see that I was already using port 8080. So I wanted to change this to something that was a little bit more friendly. So I chose 8701 for whatever reason. So that means that the web UI is going to run on 8701. I'll go ahead and throw this in here, even though I'm going to comment it out. So just so I know, if I'm looking at this container, what ports are being mapped, the mapping does need to be done on Gluton for this to work. So how do we actually get this inside of Gluton? Very easy. We're just going to add network mode service Gluton, and that way it routes all the traffic through Gluton. And then you can just say that we don't really want the container to even spin up until Gluton has actually started. So get Gluton set up first, and then it's going to start qBittorrent. Gluton isn't going to route any traffic until that VPN is established. So we are good to go there. Change the time zone to our time zone variable. And then our config, let's go ahead and just create a qBittorrent folder, and let's put our config there. So qBittorrent, Okay, so we're persisting our config, and then the downloads folder, we can keep that as downloads inside of qBittorrent. Well, let's actually just go ahead and change this to data downloads. And then let's go ahead and create our, so I did kind of mess up in terms of how I wanted to do this because I should have just called this data location and then just done data. That way we just have one file system like I described before. So change this to data location and then data. And then that way we can use that same mapping here in qBittorrent, just like that. Now I do want to go ahead and just fix Jellyfin real quick. So let's just gonna comment all of this out and take Jellyfin down and back up and just make sure that we have our libraries properly mapped now. Okay, let's go to the admin, libraries, music, manage, and then let's delete that path. We're going to go to data, media, then music. Okay, we can see that it has the bin queller in there. That's going to fix that library. Let's do the same thing with movies. Remove that, data, media, movies, and shows. Manage library, remove that. And then we're going to go to data, media, TV. Okay, so we have those mapped again. You can scan these, make sure it's all working. Okay, head back here, and our music is working again. Might just need to take some time to reload the metadata. Okay, let's get Gluetun and qBittorrent back uncommented. We've got our data location. So inside of qBittorrent, we're probably just going to have to change the downloads to make sure we're using the /data path. So do just make sure that your web UI port here is the same as the port that you are mapping for qBittorrent. Okay, so I just shifted over to my actual production server instead of the Oracle VirtualBox because I think something about the VirtualBox was preventing the VPN from working. Let's take up our qBittorrent, and then if I go to my server IP address and then 8701, you can see that I have the qBittorrent web UI. To get the username and password, we're going to check out our logs, Docker logs. Right. So username is admin, and then we get the password right there. So get the username and password. Okay, and then now we have the qBittorrent web UI. So the first thing we want to do is just make sure that the qBittorrent container IP is the same as the Gluetun IP, which should be that US IP address. That's not my IP address. That's the VPN IP address. So we can do this two ways. We can do a curl to ifconfig.me. So do a docker exec it qBittorrent, the name of the container, curl ifconfig.me, and then you should see that we get that same Proton VPN IP address, so that's good. The other way that we can just make sure that the qBittorrent user interface is using that Proton VPN is to open up a tab, go to ipleak.net. Okay, you're going to go to torrent address detection, activate, and then hit add this magnet link. So go right click, copy link address, head back to qBittorrent and say add a torrent file, or actually a torrent link. And then we will change this download location. This isn't actually going to download anything, but it is going to tell ipleak what our IP address is. Okay, and we're seeing that same IP address that we got from our Gluetun container. That way we know that it is definitely working. Okay, we can get rid of this torrent, remove. Let's go into our settings, and then we're going to change our save path to data downloads, because that is how we did it. Here, we were just mapping a data directory. Just kind of helps keep it consistent throughout each container. Save that. Okay, let's go ahead and change our password here too. So I'm going to change the username to Thomas. Change to Thomas Wild Tech. Save that. And then I'm going to go ahead and create some categories inside of here so that we can kind of easily filter our downloads within qBittorrent if we want to. So let's do movies. Save path is going to be data downloads. And we can put everything in downloads if we don't really care about the download organization. We can also do subpaths too. So let's go ahead and do movies like that. Try this out. Okay, let's create another category for TV. Add a category for music. Okay, and qBittorrent is basically set up, ready to go. So we can now add the rest of the R stack. I went ahead and pasted our R containers. I'll have all this source code in a blog post, link in the description, so you can just copy and paste this whole stack. You don't need to go in here and fix every little thing. So the ports, I showed these, but I commented them out because all of the ports we are exposing on the Gluetun container. Okay, so we have Radarr, Sonarr, Bazaar, Prowlarr, and then I also have this flare solver in here. I'll show you what we can do with this in the case that you use a tracker that is behind a Cloudflare robot detector. This actually will bypass that, so that's pretty cool. In any case, let's go ahead and take up all of these containers. So they're all going to be in the Gluetun stack. So let's go ahead and take that up, docker-compose up D. Now the first thing I'm going to tackle is the Prowlarr. So let's head over to port 9696, and then I'll just do a new tab for this. And then Prowlarr wants you to enter in a username and password, which is great. Stick with our login page, authentication required, and then we'll do that. So that's great. Okay, first thing that we'll do is add an indexer. So we're going to go add indexer. And before this, because I think we'll set up the 1337, which is probably one of the most popular ones, let's set up the flare solver. So go to settings, indexers, and then we're going to put in an indexer proxy, flare solver, and then you're going to give this a tag. So we'll just give it a tag of flare. And this is running on port 8191. And we can use localhost because everything is in the Gluetun container essentially. So let's test that and we're good to go. So we got that flare tag. Keep that in mind. We're going to save that. Now let's go to our indexer, add new indexer. So let's check out the 1337X. Okay, we can see all these things, seed ratio, seed time. So we'll go ahead and just set this to 1. Ratio should be at least 1 and follow the indexer's rules. So if you have like a private indexer, it's going to be a lot more strict on the seed ratio. So this is a good place to set that. And then we're just going to want to throw in that flare tag here and then test the connection. And then it says check mark, so it's good to go. So the next location that we're going to go to is the apps. So this is where we're going to add our connections to our different R's. So we'll start with Radarr, and then we'll just need to go over there and get the API key. So that's going to be at 7878. Let's go to our Radarr at 7878. We'll set our authentication to forms and set up username and password. Okay, so we need to get Radarr connected to Prowlarr. You can see that it says no indexers available, no download client is available. So go to settings, general, and then find that API key. So we're going to get that API key, go back to Prowlarr, throw in the API key, and then this is automatically going to have the sync categories for Radarr, which is great. That way it's only using indexers that have those categories, and we can test the connection and it's good to go. So if we hop back over here to Radarr, we go to indexers, we can see that we see the indexer now. We've already added it. Now let's hop into media management, and we need to add our root folder. So add this, it's going to be in that data and then media and then movies. That's the root folder for storing movies. And then I do like using Radarr's renaming. So it's going to use standard movie format, movie title, release year, and quality. So I think that's great. And then let's hit save changes. Next thing that we'll do is set up our qBittorrent connection. So go to download clients and hit plus, and then we'll click on qBittorrent. Okay, and then I did change that port from the standard 8080. So again, just depends on your setup. 8080 is very common. I kind of wish they had used something a little bit different. So we were using 8701. So we're gonna go 8701 localhost, our username and password. Now I did just change that, so hopefully that still is good. And then I'm going to select the category that we created in qBittorrent, which was movies. Okay, and then the completed download handling. Once the download is done, we can have it delete the download torrent file. And just keep this in mind in terms of your seeding and your hard links. If you want to seed for longer, then you might want to remove this and not have it delete the completed. Let's go ahead and keep it checked and just kind of see how that works. Test the connection, and the connection is good. So let's go ahead and save that. Okay, we are getting this this warning here. So let's go ahead and see if we can create a movies folder, do music and TV, and let's see if that makes it happy. Okay, and now we have no issues with your configuration. So I just need to create those category folders inside of the downloads folder. And now we should be good to go. So let's add our first movie. Let's do a search for the best public domain movies. Okay, It's a Wonderful Life. So we're going to come in here and type in It's a Wonderful Life. Okay, so root folder. So monitor movie only, and then we can select the quality profile. So 1080p is usually pretty reasonable. That's what I would go with. Oh, and the root folder is wrong. Let's go to settings. Okay, it should be using the data media movies. Go back here. Oh, here we go. Data media movies, and then we're going to hit add movie. Okay, so it's searching the indexer from Prowlarr, and it says one active indexer. So the initial status is going to be missing. So it says one report downloaded, so that's actually great. And then now it says downloading. So if we hop over to qBittorrent, sign back in, we can see that we actually have a download going on here. And we do see that that is in the category of movies, so that's good. Now, qBittorrent is just using the downloads folder. Okay, the torrent did finish downloading, and now it is seeding. And we can see after that download is finished, Radarr has already moved it over into our movies folder in the media, and it has renamed it accordingly. Okay, and then just automatically, Jellyfin has indexed our movie, and now we have It's a Wonderful Life right here. I am having this issue with qBittorrent putting all of the downloads in the download folder. It's actually fine if you don't mind that. It is not putting the downloads in the category folder. This is a common issue with qBittorrent, and I don't have a solution for that at this moment. So let's go ahead and do Sonarr and Lidarr. So Sonarr is running on port 8989. Put this in a new tab. Okay, just like everything else, we're going to create a forms login page, create a username and password. Okay, so the setup is pretty similar. We need to set up our indexer, our downloader, and make sure our media management looks good. So indexer, we're going to let Prowlarr do that. So let's go to general settings and come find the API key. Go back to Prowlarr and go to apps, and we're going to add Sonarr. Okay, 8989, add the API key. We got the sync categories, that looks good. Test the connection and save. So now Sonarr has Prowlarr as the indexer, and there it is right there. Media management, we do want to rename episodes, and then let's add a root folder. This is going to be our data media TV. Hit OK. Let's So I do like it handling the renaming. Okay, let's come over to the download client. We're going to add qBittorrent just like we did before, which is running on 8701. 8701 username and password. Set the username and password. It's the qBittorrent. And then the category that we wanted was just TV. And then we can test this. Again, this is going to remove it after it's totally completed. And we set the seeding to be done at 1.0. So that looks good. So we got the download client. I could go ahead and update the image with a new Docker pull. So I'm actually just using the same version that was already existing on my server. And then now we can go to add a new TV series. So let's see if we can also find, okay, top 10 movies and TV shows. Okay, let's try The Gumby Show. Let's go back to The Gumby Show. Okay, Gumby. Okay, this one did the root folder correct. So TV is a little bit different because we can either monitor all episodes, we can do missing episodes, which is typically what I would do to make sure all episodes are downloaded. I know that's kind of weird. You can also just do recent episodes. That'll do like the latest 5 or 6 episodes, first season or last season. You know, if you've already watched all the series except for the last season, you might only care to download the latest season. So we're just going to set that to missing episodes. Quality profile, we can set this to 1080p or any. I don't know what we're going to get with the Gumby Show. We can keep the series type at standard, and then we want season folders. So we can start search for missing episodes and add The Gumby Show. So we've got our one active indexer, and I probably should have just done the latest season because it looks like there might be quite a bit. Let's check it out. Okay, so we can see each season that they have here. I guess they have the seasons by the year instead of like season 1, season 2. And it's going to try to download. It's cool because it shows us like what's in our media folder at the moment. And if we don't find this, we might want to add another indexer that's more likely to have it. So this has 0 reports downloaded for all 119 episodes. So let's go into Prowlarr. Let's go to our indexers and let's add an indexer. And let's try adding EasyTV. So again, we can set the seed ratio here to 1. If you want to be the MVP, you can set it higher, of course. And then you can have a priority index on which one you want to check first. So for TV, we might want to actually set this to higher on our indexer so that it checks EasyTV first before it goes to 1337. Test it out. Good to go. Save that and close. So now we have 2 indexers. This one is only dedicated to TV. Let's see if we can find Gumby this time. So I can go to my series, look at the Gumby Show, and then let's just do a search on this latest season. So now it detects 2 active indexers. That's because we added EasyTV, and 0 reports downloaded. So in any case, if one of these was found on our indexer, it would submit the job to qBittorrent. qBittorrent would download it. Sonarr would detect, and then it would move it into our media folder, and our Jellyfin will pick it up as a newly added TV show. So almost go ahead and give up on our public domain TV shows, but you kind of get how that works. Okay, I actually forgot to include Lidarr in our stack, so let's add that right here. Again, check the link in the description for this whole Docker Compose file. And let's go ahead and just add that Lidarr folder where we're mounting our config. Okay, and I should be able to just take this up. I don't know why I did Docker twice. So Lidarr is going to start. Lidarr is on 8686. I'll just go ahead and add that port mapping there so that we know. Let's create another tab, set our authentication to form, set our username and password. Okay, let's go ahead and add that root folder in the settings and media management. So this is going to be our data, media, music. Just call it root. and save. I do want to go ahead and rename tracks. That way you do get the album title and release year as the parent folder. If you don't hit the rename tracks, you might get every single song going into the artist folder, which you don't want that to happen. Let's save those changes, and then we're going to get the API key for Lidarr. Come back over to Prowlarr and go to Settings, Apps, and we're just going to add another one. We can go 8686, that's what it is. Paste that API key in there, and you can see we have the categories already done for us. Hit test and save. Head back over to Lidarr. Should see that sync momentarily. There it is. So we only get 1337 because the EasyTV doesn't have the music tag. So that's why we only see this one. If we wanted to add additional indexers, we need to make sure they have the music tag, obviously. Let's add qBittorrent, which is on 8701, username and password for qBittorrent. Category is music. That's what we're telling qBittorrent the category is. And then again, we're just going to go ahead and remove it after it's completed. You can uncheck this if you want to seed forever. Okay, test out the connection and we're good. So save. Okay, so Lidarr has had issues previously. So let's check this out. It already detects bin queller. So we can see that we have 2 albums. Okay, and then if I owned these, now again, this is kind of a gray area in terms of your indexer and seeding it. So just keep that in mind in terms of sharing, but you can kind of just see, okay, look, these are the albums that I have. These are the albums that I do not have. So that's kind of how that works. We can try it with a new artist. So Lidarr is kind of weird. So like, let's say I do bin folds. It's not going to find it. Oh, I found it. Okay, maybe they made an improvement because before they did not find it. So I would always have to go to the Music Brains ID. So that's cool. Let's look up some public domain music. Now, again, just, full disclaimer, you do want to just make sure that you are getting public domain. Even if a song is very old, if it's a recent recording of that song, then it could obviously be copyright. So okay, so this is recorded 1937. I think this is public domain. So Alexander's Ragtime Band. We're gonna monitor missing albums. So I just always want to monitor everything that I'm missing. Don't really need to monitor albums that I currently have. Quality profile, set that to any. You can have lossless or standard, and then we're good to go. So let's go ahead and add that. And so if it doesn't give you a result for your search, let me just see if I can put something random in here. Okay, if it doesn't give you a result, what you would do is go to the Music Brains here, and then do your search here. So let's just do bin folds again as an example. And then this is just an example, okay guys? So go to bin folds. Okay, and then that's gonna load his artist page, and then this is his unique ID on this database. So we'd copy this, and then we go Lidarr:ID. So Lidarr:ID, and then you can see how it found bin folds like that. So you can do that as well if the search engine is not working. So we can come over here, we can see the Boswell Sisters, Alexander's Ragtime Band. Let's just check the monitoring and go to missing albums and then do a search. And just search. I don't know how successful we'll be. The other cool thing too is with your existing media, you can come in here and look at the preview, rename, and look, you can see how it can rename all of the files for us according to our pattern. So this is a phenomenal way to get all of your historical music all organized and renamed. So that's how you use Lidarr. Okay, the last thing I want to show you is Jellyseer because it is just so beautiful. This does not need to run in the Gluetun network. And the reason why is because Jellyfin isn't in the Gluetun network, and you don't want Jellyfin to be in the Gluetun network because it will take a lot more of your CPU when you have multiple streamers. So keep that in mind. You should keep Jellyfin outside of the Gluetun network. So you can see that it is just running on the default network. It is not running in the network mode service Gluetun. Neither is Jellyseer, because Jellyseer wants to be able to talk to Jellyfin as well as Radarr and Sonarr. So we'll map this to port 5055. Let's go ahead and create a config folder for Jellyseer. And then I have it just depending on like the whole stack. I just want the whole stack pretty much to go ahead and come on up. And that is that. Let's go ahead and do a docker-compose.yml to get Jellyseer up and running. So let's add yet another tab, 5055. Okay, so Jellyseer is up and running. We want to go ahead and configure Jellyfin right here. So this should be running in the same default network stack as Jellyfin. So I should be able to just reference it like that. Let's set up a username and password. Okay, you do need to give it an email address. So I'm going to go ahead and give my email address there. And let's see if we can connect like that. Okay, let's try scanning our Jellyfin library. We want to sync our movies and shows. So start scan. Okay, and then hit continue. And now we can add our Radarr server and our Sonarr server so that Jellyseer can send those requests to Radarr and Sonarr. So Jellyseer is a request system that is really pretty. You can give access to, you know, your different clients, and it's just a much easier way to set up downloads than going into Radarr and Sonarr directly. So I never you just don't have to go in. You can just use Jellyseer and it's so nice. So let's add Radarr. Server name, we'll just call this whatever we want, Wild Tech Media. Okay, and so Jellyseer is not in that Gluetun network, so I cannot just reference the local host. I am just doing a port binding to my actual host. So I'm going to use my host IP, throw that in there. Let's go get that API key again, copy that, and paste. Test the connection. Connection established successfully. Set that to be the default server. The root folder is the data media movies. Quality profile, we'll set that to 1080p, and then we can add the server. Okay, and then same thing with Sonarr. Going to get our host IP, and I can just call this Sonarr to default server. I only have one Sonarr server. And then we need the API key. Let's go get this API key here and head back over, test it. It's good. So we can set a quality profile. Root folder is the data media TV, and then add that server. Okay, so we have Radarr, Sonarr, finished setup. Okay, we can see the recently added. Do you see how pretty this is? This is just so pretty. Very, very pretty. So let's try looking at another open source public domain, Night of the Living Dead. So let's grab this, go into Jellyseer. So we can just hit request. It'll be approved. Hit that request. And then boom, that's all that has to do. Okay, so you can see that that went through from Jellyseer, that request, and it's already done. It's downloading now. And then it's already added to my recently added movies in Jellyfin. So it's absolutely beautiful. Okay, let's go ahead and download the Jellyfin app. So Jellyfin, install, open. So we should be able to reach our server. Set the background to unrestricted. That just allows you to run Jellyfin in the background a lot more easily. And then we're ready to sign in. Okay, and here we go. We're able to listen to our music. We're able to watch movies. And if I want to use Jellyseer, the best way to do this is to use the web app, and that's running on 5055. So by default, I log in with my Jellyfin credentials. So just keep that in mind. And then what you can do with this is save the web app as an app. So I've never actually done this with Lineage OS. So maybe it's add a shortcut. Yep, add shortcut, add to home screen. So the cool thing about that is that it basically acts like a native app. You come right in here and it looks perfect. It looks beautiful. Okay guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this Jellyfin tutorial, getting your whole Jellyfin and Sonarr or R stack set up. Most importantly, using the Gluetun Docker container and our Proton VPN. Now make sure to check the link in the description to see my affiliate link. That does just help me out if you guys did go to use Proton because of this tutorial. So I do appreciate you giving me credit for that. I am gonna do another tutorial on the best setup for accessing Jellyfin outside of your network. That's going to be using Pangolin in a Oracle or any VPS. We can run our own proxy. We're not going to be using Cloudflare Tunnel because that'd be violating their terms of service in terms of streaming media. So we want to own our own VPS. We can run Pangolin. We can run our own Cloudflare Tunnel. So make sure to subscribe so you don't miss that video, and I will see you in the next one. All right.